Hello everybody and welcome to video 6 of 14. Today I want to talk to you guys about programming. I'm mostly going to talk to you about MKUltra, but I'm also going to address some other forms of programming, mostly MKUltra because that's most popular programming. This is a triggering topic, so if you're a survivor of sexual abuse at the hands of the occult or elite sex trafficking, or you know that you're a survivor of MKUltra, you may want to use caution while watching this. I'm going to go into some details about how people get programmed and what programming entitles. So if you don't know if you're a survivor, but if you get triggered by this, please stop watching or use caution while watching. I'm also going to share about a couple other forms of programming as well, but it's mostly about MKUltra. So what is MKUltra? MKUltra is mind control ultra. It's a form of mind control that the CIA has been dabbling in decades. It's been publicly exposed, but not on the same level of what it's done. It was exposed as a trauma-based mind control that used psychedelic drugs, but publicly, that's what it's known as. Privately, it's a lot worse than that. Privately, we're involving sexual torture, we're involving sexual abuse, torture, BDSM stuff that's unwilling. We're talking about snuff films, we're talking about torture films, we're talking about really, really disgusting things that people have to endure. Trauma-based mind control aims at re-traumatizing a victim and trying to control them and every part of them. And a lot of survivors of ritualistic abuse, especially in sex trafficking, split into alternate personalities. This is because the trauma is so bad and their mind fractures into multiple personalities. People who have multiple personalities are not crazy. They're not bad. They're not demon possessed. Some people may have demons connected to their altars, but they themselves are not demon possessed. It's not a demon that's manifesting. There can be demons attached to altars, just like there can be demons attached to singletons. But the point that is that most survivors of trauma, most survivors of MKUltra and of CIA-based trauma and mind control, sex trafficking, and ritualistic abuse are split. And those altars break off because of trauma and because of how bad it is. Your mind starts to shut down, disassociate into other personalities. Those things are not crazy. They're not demons. They are just the way that the mind works, the way that the mind operates. It's a gift from God, talked about in Psalm 34, verse 18, which talks about being broken and spilled out. That word for broken right there is actually found in the original Hebrew. If you go back to the original language, it actually means to be fractured or to be fragmented, which means, what does that mean? To have alternate personalities or to have fragmented personalities. I'm going to talk more about DID tomorrow because this has to do with a lot to do with programming. But today I'm mostly just talking about how programming works and what it's set up like. And not everybody who's programmed is split, and not everybody who's split is programmed. But there is a lot of overlap, especially when it comes to CIA-based trauma mind control, MKUltra. There is a lot of splits that endure because the mind can't handle the trauma of the torture that they have to go through. MKUltra was started by the CIA to experiment on humans. It's done mostly to children, but there are adult survivors. Most everybody that you see that's famous is a survivor of MKUltra. It's very common with famous people. There's a few celebrities, a few politicians that are not survivors, but almost every single survivor and almost every single celebrity and politician are a survivor of MKUltra, or various other forms of programming, which I will touch on towards the end of this video. But right now I'm focusing on MKUltra because, like I said, it's the most popular. As I've mentioned before, most of what happens is a courtesy of the American government. Most of the worldwide sex trafficking rings tied to the American government. There are other various organizations involved and various governments, but it's mostly the American government. The American government's been involved in heinous crimes for decades now, and the American government needs to be exposed. Not everybody in the American government's bad, but there is a large portion of the American government that are traffickers, that are raping children, that are trafficking children, that are trafficking unwilling adults, that are raping unwilling adults, even trafficking animals. There's a huge underground bestiality trafficking ring going on as well, which I'm going to expose more of that in a couple videos from now. So this stuff is going on, and people need to understand that's what MKUltra is. MKUltra is used to program a person's mind who's been traumatized, somebody who's been abused, somebody who's been tortured, somebody who's been sexually abused. It happens most with sexual abuse and sexual torment, but there's also other kinds of tortures that can cause a person to split, such as things like waterboarding, sleep deprivation, sounds and torture through minds. Like I mentioned the other night, there is a chip program. The chips are used to torment people as well, but that's specifically people who are bloodliners or IC, military, celebrities or politicians. Regular people don't get chipped. It just depends on what you're involved in or if you're a bloodliner. And then there's also programming that can happen from things such as being forced to tied down to a chair, tied down to beds, having water poured on you, having spiders and snakes put on you. Yes, that happens. It happened to me. I had people put spiders on me when they were abusing me. Witnessing people being murdered, being tortured. There's all kinds of different things that can cause trauma-based mind control. These things are specifically when something's traumatic, but most of it involves sexual abuse, but there's also torture aspects as well. And sometimes the sexual abuse includes the torture. For me, it was both sexual abuse and torture, horrendous torture, which I want to talk more about in a little bit. I went through horrific torture at the hands of the American government. And I'm exposing what I've been through because I know that there's other people out there who need their justice. I'm trying to get my justice as well. But even if I never get my public justice, there's people out there who need to know what's going on so that they can get justice. But I pray that I can get my justice as well. I've been working with law enforcement for a couple years, believing for my justice, hoping for my justice, praying for my justice. That's what my desire is. But I also desire everybody else who's a victim to get justice as well. So trauma-based mind control has been around since the 1950s. The CIA was actually using the same techniques that Nazi Germany used. The whole reason that America went to war with Nazi Germany and to begin with was not to protect the world, but rather to get the techniques about how to ritualistically abuse people in a more formulated way, and also how to program people, and they also wanted to know how to torture people. That was why America went to war in the first place. Not everybody in the American war, back in World War II, was involved in it, but a lot of the people knew what they were doing, and a lot of people just went to war just so that they could get, and I'm talking about the government that declared war and the people that were involved, they did it so that they could get techniques from Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was experts at torture, expert at abuse, expert at torturing the youth, especially like Hitler's youth. They were all programmed and abused. It's very, very common. So the American government decided to go to Nazi Germany and try to take their plans of how they can program and torment people and torture them. And that's how we got the CIA. The CIA was founded always to be a bad organization. Just recently, it's actually has a splinter group of people that are working at the CIA that are fighting against the trafficking ring on the inside. These are called Gina Haspel's people. There's a group of people who are loyal to Gina Haspel, who used to be the CIA director, who used to torment me as well. She was somebody that used to stalk me, which I'll talk about later on. But her people, the people that were loyal to her, are all victims themselves, and they want freedom. Most everybody that works at the CIA is a victim on some level. But the girls, especially that were Gina loyalists, they want to bring down the worldwide trafficking ring. So there's a splinter cell at the CIA that are trying to get freedom from the trafficking. So that's really awesome. But the CIA was used to hurt a lot of people. So there's different kinds of programming, and like I said, I'm going to talk more about DID and about more about how altars work tomorrow. And I'm also going to talk about state-funded terrorism, false flags as well. So programming involves several different levels. There's sex programming, there's assassin programming, and then there's suicide programming, and then there's other kinds of programming. So at first I want to talk to you guys about sex programming, because that's the most common, because most MK Ultra has to do with sexual stuff, and they're trying to make people a sex-crazed group of people who are programmed to perform. This happens mostly with celebrities and presidential sex slaves. I was a presidential sex slave, not willingly, but I had 2 presidents sexually assault me, which I'm going to talk more about at a later date. I've been abused by numerous Congress members and senates. I am a presidential sex slave that I'm not willing. I'm a victim. I'm not willing. I'm a victim of it. I was never willingly with them, but they were trying to get me to become a presidential sex slave. I was being raped and trafficked by 2 different presidents. One trafficked me, one raped me. They were trying to make me into a presidential sex slave. A lot of celebrities are presidential sex slaves, especially girls. We see it with girls such as Miley Cyrus. We see it with people like Britney Spears. We see it with people like Lady Gaga, people who are kind of promiscuous publicly. A lot of those people are victims. Now, Miley did go in willingly. She joined the cult willingly, but people like Lady Gaga, Britney Spears are victims. They were being used as presidential sex slaves. Marilyn Monroe was the first presidential sex slave. She was the first one to be programmed with presidential sex slavery. I was used by, like I said, multiple people in Congress and Senate, abused by 2 presidents, assaulted by 2 presidents, used as a sex slave by one of the presidents, and this is very common. It's more common with bloodliners. I'm a bloodliner. I'm not a celebrity, obviously, but I'm a bloodliner. A lot of celebrity women are used as sex slaves. There's some men as well, like I have a couple guys that I know that were used as presidential sex slaves as well, even though they were men, but it's usually females that are used for this. Disgusting. It's so disgusting, guys. This programming and this trafficking ring reaches beyond what you can understand. It's insane. So the programming, there's a sex programming, there's assassin programming, there's other forms of programming, and there's suicide programming. So sex programming involves emerald programming, diamond programming, ruby programming. Emerald programming represents that a person is a handler. A lot of the celebrities that are traffickers started out as victims themselves, and they got programmed by the CIA to become handlers, and they became handlers themselves. Sometimes it was out of spite for their abusers. Sometimes they willingly joined because they wanted the money and the fame that went with the power. And some of them were being coerced into joining, and they eventually became emerald sex slave programmers. Some of these emerald programmers try to maintain a squeaky clean image, such as Taylor Swift. The real Taylor Swift, there's a body double one for Taylor Swift. She's not the real person. Taylor Swift there's a body double program, which I'm going to talk about at a later date, but body double programs are known as doppelgangers. They're people who look like the real person, and they actually get put in by the CIA or sometimes by the White Eyes, but the body double program is real. The real Taylor Swift is not the person that Taylor is playing right now. Well, I should say that there's a couple of different people playing Taylor, but the one Taylor is an emerald handler. People think she's a great person. They think that she's squeaky clean. She's an emerald handler. As people like Miley Cyrus became an emerald handler, Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, Pam Bondi. These people are examples, just a few of the many examples of emerald handlers. Beyonce used to be an emerald handler, but she's not anymore. Katy Perry used to be an emerald handler. She's not anymore. There's all this going on behind the scenes. So emerald programmers are handlers or traffickers that are high up in the cult. Some of them, like they said, got coerced. Some of them are body doubles. Some of them are just bad people. They're just bad. They wanted to join because they wanted the money and the popularity. And they get programmed by the CIA with emerald programming to become handlers and traffickers. There's also diamond programming, which is considered kitty cat programming, sex kittens. I'm sure you've heard that term. Sex kitten programming is done to mostly females, although there are some men that have it. Sex kitten programming, diamond programming, is done to make a female perform sexually. A lot of girls who are programmed with diamond programming don't even remember going to rituals, don't remember going to sex parties. They're being used and abused by men, and women too, but mostly by men. One celebrity has testified privately that she was a split, and she actually would get called to these sex parties, and she would black out because they would trip her. They would send her trip codes, which I'll talk about that here in a few minutes as well. Send her trip codes, call up certain altars of hers that were programmed to perform sexually. She would go to these rituals and these hotel sex parties, and these sex parties for the elite, not willingly. She was just being victimized, and she was being tripped. And she would go here, and she would wake up 3 or 4 hours later surrounded by 7 or 8 different men that she had had to perform for. She's a victim. She's not willingly in the cult. She's a victim. She doesn't remember a lot of this stuff because she has a sex kitten altar. She needs inner healing. This girl is a Christian. She loves the Lord, but she's being trafficked and she's being abused, and she has sex kitten programming. And then there's ruby programming, which is considered puppy programming. So puppies, as you know, when you think about a dog, puppies are more docile. They don't fight back as much. Sometimes they think that they just have to perform. That's how puppy programming is. So ruby programming is all about that. And diamond programming is all about sex kitten programming. The sex kittens are a little bit more aggressive. Rubies are docile. I was programmed with the ruby programming. I'm not that programmed. I'm one of the few people. There's very few people that, there's 85% of humanity can be programmed quickly. I think it's about 10% that takes a while, and then there's 5% that is almost impossible to program unless they go through some intense torture. So I'm in that 5%. Don't quote me on the numbers. It might be a little bit less than that, but I'm in the 5% that it takes intense trauma for someone to be programmed. I had a little bit of ruby programming from some of my handlers because I was tortured so much. I'm still trying to work through that a little bit, but it's just something that happened to me from all the trauma. And the diamond programming is more aggressive. So ruby programming is more like a puppy where you feel like you can't fight back and you just lay there and you just take the abuse, basically. That's what ruby programming is. Rubies are never handlers. Rubies are always victims. So someone like myself's always been a victim. They're not willingly doing anything. They're just handled, and they're abused and misused by the government and by the elite and by the politicians and celebrities. Rubies are docile like puppy dogs, and they are very, very abused, you know, and that's how it was for me. I had ruby programming. Diamond programming, some of them can become emeralds. Diamonds are aggressive, but it's because they're programmed to be aggressive. Not all diamonds are going to become handlers. Some of these celebrities, like I said, some of these celebrities do not want to be handlers. They're being abused themselves. They're being programmed. They're being tripped. They're survivors. They do not want anything to do with the cult willingly. They're just being handled. Some of them are actually saved and spirit-filled Christians behind the scenes, but they just have a lot of diamond programming that they need to get deprogrammed from. And then emeralds are willingly choosing, after a certain point, they willingly choose to become a handler or a trafficker. But again, it's because of their programming. So those are the three main sex programmings that we deal with. And then there's something called silence is golden. Now, guys, this is a programming that's done in order to keep people silent, especially celebrities and politicians, people in the intelligence community, and military members. It also happens to regular victims as well, but it's more if you're a bloodliner. If you're a regular victim, but you're not a bloodliner, you're not going to get SIG. SIG is something that they program you with, where they threaten your family, they threaten your life, they threaten your animals, they threaten your kids, they threaten your friends. They say that if you talk, they're going to hurt you. So a lot of celebrities are programmed with SIG. A lot of politicians are programmed with SIG. Even some of the handlers have SIG because they really did want out at one point, but they became handlers because they had SIG and they couldn't talk and they started to feel guilty and they willingly joined the organizations in the organized sex slavery industry. This is very, very real. SIG's very real. A couple of the celebrities that I've gotten to minister to actually are trying to break their SIG. There's one celebrity specifically who's trying to break her SIG so she can expose diamond programming and so she can expose her traffickers because she's being trafficked. So you guys, if you could pray for the celebrities that have SIG, and that have diamond and ruby programming, if you could pray for them, that God would set them free. These are things that are very, very real, my friends. These things are very, very real. And then when you deal with the body doubles, sometimes there's multiple people playing a celebrity. If you notice some pictures of certain celebrities, they look different in some pictures than others. It's because it's not the real person. There's people called Nikos or state actors who are actually sent in by the government. They can manipulate the way they look. The government has ways using technology that's far advanced to manipulate the ways that they look. There's other ways that body doubles come about, which I'm not going to get into at the moment, but there's other things as well. But a lot of it's manipulation of what people look like, or it's state actors who are like stunt doubles. You know, you hear the term stunt doubles in Hollywood movies, doppelgangers, stunt doubles, kind of the same thing, body doubles. So some of the celebrities have body doubles, and sometimes it's not the real person. Sometimes people have actually been replaced, meaning that the occult killed off the real person and they put in body doubles. Who are taking over as the person. Sometimes there's several different people playing the person, so there may be the real person who's good and they're being set up by bad body doubles, which is the case of several people in the Epstein files. Body doubles are very real, and like I mentioned earlier about Taylor, the real Taylor is not the person I'm talking about when I talk about Taylor. I'm talking about her body double, who's the main person that plays her right now. When she acts like she's squeaky clean, but she's very deep in Blackwater. She's one of the top female agents for Blackwater, which I talked about yesterday in my videos. This is real, guys. This stuff is real. These people are programmed. They have handlers. They're handler. Oh, that's another thing. If you guys don't know what the term handler means, when I say handler, I mean the person that's controlling them, that's abusing them, that's selling them. A handler is often like a pimp, basically. You have the pimps when you're a willing prostitute, but you have a handler when you're being trafficked or when you're being coerced into things. So I use that term handler talking about our traffickers or the coercion. So I'm not going to say pimp because pimp is a term that people use for willing prostitution. I'm not going to say that term. I don't like that term because it's used for willing prostitution. There's nothing willing about sex trafficking. Even if you're being coerced and you're being forced to do things, you're being forced into it, just because your family's being threatened or something, that still doesn't mean that you're willing. Or just because you have programming, even if you have programming, if you're being forced to perform and that people trip your programming, you're not doing it willingly. You're being tripped, you're being programmed, and you're being tripped. And I want to encourage anybody who watches this live or on the archives that does have programming of any sorts, especially sex programming. If you get tripped and people purposely trip you and you fall into sleeping with somebody, or if you get tripped and you don't fight back, or something, I want you to know that's not your fault. You are the victim. If someone tries to trip you on purpose, that's on them. They're purposely a handler and they're trying to trip you. and they're responsible, not you. They're coercing you, and they are abusing you, and they are using you. You need to know that, guys. So the next form of programming that I want to talk about is suicide programming, which is called Onyx programming. Onyx programming is put into a lot of people who are gray eyes, which I've talked about before in the past. Gray eyes are people who are working on our side to try to bring down the worldwide trafficking ring, but they're a little bit more gray. They might be assassins. They might be willing to torture traffickers. They might be assassins to kill traffickers or terrorists and not have to get anything of it. A lot of gray eyes are working on our side to try to expose things, but they do some questionable things that white eyes wouldn't do. So for instance, they may, like, instead of the white eyes, what I mean by that is that the white eyes are people that are, they gather intel and they try to arrest people. They only kill people if it's absolutely necessary to save someone's life. The gray eyes, a little bit more gray. They take care of traffickers and terrorists and murderers, and these people that are handling people can kill them, or they like torture them or something. They do a little bit more gray stuff, but they're still on our side. They're still fighting. It's just that they take care of things in different ways. So a lot of people who are gray eyes get programmed with Onyx programming. Onyx programming is suicide programming. It's to keep a person from exposing things as well. It's kind of like SIG. SIG keeps a person from talking. Suicide programming is when somebody who is gray eyes, and sometimes it happens to white eyes as well, but especially with gray eyes, there's suicide programming where a person feels like they have to commit suicide if they start to talk, and they get tripped and they start to go down this trigger warning rabbit hole. That's a trip code in the cult community, so I use that word cautiously, but trigger warning rabbit hole. They go down the rabbit hole and they have things that trip them, and they start to question their reality. They start to feel overwhelmed by their handlers, etc., etc., and then their suicide programming, their Onyx programming gets stripped and they attempt suicide. So that's suicide programming. And then there is alpha and beta programming. Alpha programming is a form of assassinate programming. This happens with some of the gray eyes as well. And it's also people who have been programmed by the CIA to become assassins. Every country has their own form of programming for assassin programming, but it's not nearly as deep as the CIA's programming. A lot of false flags have been done by either people that were the wrong person was blamed, which is why I call it a false flag, because when I say false flag, please don't think I'm talking about like Alex Jones' idea of false flags. Alex Jones says that things never happen. No, these things happen. It's just that the wrong people get blamed for the false flag. So false flag can either be carried out by somebody who was being blamed, that for somebody who got their assassin programming tripped, which happens sometimes. We think about Sandy Hook. We think about Aurora, Colorado. Those people were programmed. They got their assassin programming tripped by their handlers, and they went out on a killing spree. But then there's like false flags that can have people who are being blamed. Like, for instance, 911 blamed it on the Muslims when it was hardly any real Muslims. It was actually mostly the American government behind 911, which I kind of touched on the first video. Most of 911 was planned by the American government and by the Rothschild banking family, and by some of the billionaires around the world. And also Bibi Netanyahu helped finance 911, but that's besides the point. 911 was probably the biggest false flag of all time, and they blamed the other side because they were actually involved in it. It was the billionaires, it was the American government, it was some other leaders in the world that were involved in planning 911. And there were some Muslims, public Muslims. They weren't real Muslims, but there were some public Muslims involved, such as the Saudi royal family, who's Blackwater agents, by the way. So there were other people that were Muslims involved, but only in name only. They were mostly Luciferians that faked to be Muslims. So that's what I mean by assassin programming. They get people tripped to commit terrorist attacks, to kill people, to kill innocent people. Assassin programming doesn't get tripped to kill bad people. It's to kill good people or innocent people. And beta programming works underneath assassins. Usually they're usually being handled by alphas. So beta programming is usually people that are being trained to be assassins, or usually they're handlees. Alphas themselves are not always handlees. Sometimes they just have programming and they get tripped, but sometimes the betas work underneath them, and the betas are being trained to be assassins, or they are what I would consider like they're mules, like to get bombs, to get guns, things like that. Like they're being used by them and abused by them. And that's what beta programming is. So let's see. The other forms of programming I want to talk to you about today is Cinderella programming and Wizard of Oz programming. Cinderella programming. Those people that have Cinderella programming are programmed to become like cult mules or have cult loyal alters. What I mean by that is cult mules are people who are survivors. They may not, they're usually not in the occult themselves and usually not in the actual occult, but they are being used by people in the occult. They're being handled by people in the occult, and they do jobs for the people in the occult, either through coercion, through threats, sometimes even from being blanked out. If they're split and they have DID, they might be blacked out and their programming might get tripped and they might be sent. They may actually split into some of their other alters may come out and they might do jobs for the occult, not even realize that they're doing it. Cult mules are like people who are not culties themselves, but they're still kind of working with them. It also Cinderella programming also refers to cult loyal alters. If a person is a bloodliner or they've been ritualistically abused from childhood, if they're not saved before the time they're 7 years old, everybody who's split gets cult loyal alter. So the person themselves may be saved once they get older, but then there's a part of them that's still loyal to the cult. That's not their fault. It's just part of the programming, and it's part of what happens. It happens in mass save for all survivors of ritualistic abuse who do not get saved before the ages of 7, but usually bloodliners, especially because some ritualistic abuse starts after 7. But for people who are bloodliners, it's like for myself, the abuse usually starts in infancy or under 1 year old. Mine started in infancy, but I didn't have a cult loyal because I am a spirit-filled Christian, and I got saved when I was 3 years old, so that didn't happen to me, but a lot of other people I know do have cult loyals. So that's one thing that needs to be talked about. So then there's also AIW, which is Alice in Wonderland programming. Alice in Wonderland programming trips people to not believe anything is real. AIW makes a person question their reality. It makes them if they start to talk about what's happened to them, or they start to address the situations that they've gone through, the attacks that they've gone through, the abuse they've gone through, they start to address it publicly. AIW will be tripped. Somebody will start gaslighting them, maybe trip codes sent to them. People will try desperately to try to make them think that things aren't real, or make them question their reality. They may even replace people, like I said earlier about body doubles, and make people in their lives be people that they're not, and try to make them think that, like, people come into their lives that they used to trust who start to turn on them or betray them or start to act crazy towards them. It's all a form of manipulation and complete narcissistic personality disorder abuse, and it's a form of coercion, and it's a form of trying to keep a person silent. AIW gets tripped, and a lot of people, I had a friend who was actively, he took down 6,500 of the darknet porn websites, and he had the worst AIW I've ever seen. He was a survivor himself. His mom was a witch and a trafficker, trafficked him from the time he was a little boy. And he took down these porn websites on the darknet. Like, some of them were willing porn, but most of them were abuse porn websites. He took them down, and he did such great work to try to rescue victims that way. But he was so programmed, and I've never met anybody with AIW as badly. He would go almost every day where he'd start to question if things were real. Then he would get his suicide programming tripped. He'd start to want to commit suicide. He'd start to question his reality. He got lit by people around him who were working as handlers, and he thought that they were his friends, and they weren't. They started gaslighting him. This is very real, guys, and it's very, very elaborate, and the cult families especially have this same way of responding to things. People in the occult are trained, and again, when I say occult, I'm not talking about like Wiccans. I'm talking about Luciferians, black magic practitioners, voodoo priests, things like that. I'm not talking about like Wiccans. Wiccans are not who I'm talking about. And I'm also not talking about low-level Satanists, because Satanists don't even worship Lucifer. They don't do rituals to hurt people. They just like to play around and act like they're big tough guys by playing with pentagrams and listening to rock music, doing drugs, having sex. That's what Satanism is for the most part. It's hedonistic. But Luciferianism is the one that I'm talking about. Luciferianism focuses on torture, rape, programming, sex trafficking, false flag terrorism, gaslighting. That's very big thing. So that's what I'm talking about. So like, we need to understand, if we want to help victims, we need to understand what programming is. Epstein was a programmer. He was involved in the CIA programming division, and I think he also worked with Red Mossad, and I think he was tied to Blackwater as well. And he was a programmer and he was not a top handler, but he was a mid-level handler. See, that's the thing about Epstein. He had a wide variety of handlers and traffickers he was around, but he himself was just a mid-level one. He was not nearly as high up as a lot of these people are. So what we're going to see with the Epstein files is a slow drip, drip, drip. Tsunami should be coming very soon. The Tsunami releasing explosive details about numerous famous people. And there's going to be people who are not even, they're not even going to be famous that are going to be brought down. But a lot of famous people are going to be brought down. I have a list. Here, I'll show you guys. I'm going to go over the list here in a couple of days, but I'm going to show you my list so far. I'm not going to show you the names on it because it's a couple of days. But this is the list that I have so far of all the people that trafficked me. There's that. And then, or trafficked, stalked, or harassed me. And then there's continuing over to here. And that's just some of the people. That's not all of them, but that's just some of the well-known people that I have listed. I'm going to go over that in a couple of days, but I have at least, I'd say I have at least 70 names on here of famous people. And those are just some of them. It's not everybody, but it's just some of them that were involved. Some of them were trafficking me. Some of them made money off of trafficking me. Some of them raped me. Some of them gang stalked me. Some of them threatened me. Some of them tried to have me killed. But they were all somehow connected to the worldwide trafficking ring or the worldwide terrorism organizations. So this is very real, guys. And I have a lot of names on my list, but there's a lot more people even involved than even the ones that I have. But I was targeted by a lot of them, so I can name a lot of names. And I'm hoping to get a chance to testify so I can bring these people down and expose them for what they did to me and what they do to other people. So if you guys would just keep everybody who's a survivor in prayer, all the victims that are still being trafficked in prayer, all the people who are still being ritualistically abused in prayer, all the survivors of ritualistic abuse in prayer. We need the prayers. We have been through hell on earth. It's a systematic, organized crimes committed against us. So if you guys would keep us in prayer, keep me in prayer as I do these videos, because I'm sharing stuff that's very intense and it's a little bit triggering to share. So if you'd keep me in prayer, I'm going to post a video later on, another one about, I'm going to be talking about state-funded terrorism and about false flags. And then I'm going to talk about DID tomorrow. And then I'm going to start into my second part of my series where I'm talking more about my own history and the things I've been through, which is going to be really hard to talk about, but definitely necessary. So I wish you guys the best of luck. But have a great day. God bless you. In 20 minutes, we're going to be starting our Aligned Triumphs Women's Conference. So if you are on right now, this is Saturday afternoon. If you guys are on right now, you can comment and I'll give you guys the link so you can join in. God bless you guys, and I pray God's greatest blessings upon each and every one of you. Have a great day. God bless.